Good morning. Good morning. An offer day to the Committee on General Government Operations and Appropriations and Housing is now called to order. I ask my colleagues to please take a seat. Notice for this public hearing were disseminated via email to all senators and all main media broadcasting outlets. First public notice was issued on Tuesday, January 19, and then issued on February 2nd. And then issued on February 5th. And for the record, today is Wednesday, February 10th, and the time now is 9:02. The committee will hear and accept testimonies on Bill 1-36 LS, introduced by Vice Speaker Tina Rose Muña Barnes, co-sponsored by Senator Jose Pedo Terlaje and Senator Tony Ada. An act to temporarily waive payment of business license fees from October 1st, 2020 to September 30th, 2022, and to allow for business license fee credit for business who paid their license fees prior to the enactment of this act, and to cite this act as the Business Assistance Act of 2021. I'd like to acknowledge my colleagues that are participating in this public hearing. We'll begin with the author of the bill, Madam Vice Speaker Tina Rose Muña Barnes. We'll start with my far right, would be Senator Chris Duenas, Senator Tony Ada, Senator Telo Taitigui, Senator Joanne Brown, and Senator Jim Moylan. General rules for this public hearing. Those testifying on behalf of Bill 1-36 LS will be recognized by myself and invited to the panel. We have already invited Ms. Daphne Shimzu, the Director of Department of Revenue and Taxation. Written testimony shall be submitted to the committee. Please provide my legislative staff with your written testimony for photocopying. Testimony may be read, and lengthy testimony should be summarized to about 5 minutes, but we can extend that time. Individuals will be allowed to present oral testimony only once. Once you're done, you may be asked to remain in the room for questions or for additional testimony as may be desired by members of the committee. Questions and testimony shall be confined to the substance or nature of the agenda. Personal inference as to the character or the motive of any senator or any individual testifying is not permitted. Any violation of this general rules of conduct will result in removal from the public hearing by myself. Proper form and decorum shall be practiced by all present in the public hearing room for these proceedings. Individuals who fail to maintain proper form and decorum may be restricted from providing oral testimony and will be escorted from the room. When you speak, please make sure that the microphone is on and that you speak into the microphone. Please state your name and your title for the record. We will now begin to discuss Bill 1-36. Now, to ask the author of the bill, Vice Speaker Tina Rose Muña Barnes, to give her opening statement. Madam Vice.
Mr. Chair, to you and to all my colleagues here, and to the listening audience, and of course, Director Shimizu, thank you for being here. I want to say half a day, Mr. Chair, and thank you for hosting this hearing today, and I appreciate you working closely with our staff so that we can try to get this ready for session next week, hopefully. I want to also thank my co-sponsors, Senator Jose Pedo Terlaje and Senator Tony Ada, for supporting me in this endeavor. Mr. Chair, I want to note that as the fiscal note clearly reports that there may be a $2.5 million yearly, or $5 million for the next 2 fiscal years, that will escape our government coffers. I want to note to you that I also know firsthand that there is a shortfall in collections this fiscal year. The brunt end of the shortfall, as anyone who understands government can tell you, that taxes are a small part of what the businesses collect. It is our local businesses, from small business, multi-general businesses, local families, entrepreneurs who are trying to make a better life for their families. COVID-19 has impacted their bottom line. A business license is a small, minuscule cost compared to the profits these businesses would have made prior to COVID-19. But this is one way we can help our hardworking residents mitigate the impacts of COVID-19. Mr. Chair, I want to share that we always talk about developing new industries, promoting circular economy, becoming more self-sustainable, and waiving these fees for licensing is a very, very small step. But it is one obstacle that we can actually remove to help make it easier for our local residents to become entrepreneurs. I also want to share with you that, Mr. Chair, and to the listening audience and my colleagues, that many of our people are out of jobs right now. And for many, their way of life will be greatly changed as a result of this pandemic, COVID-19. And you don't have to look far to see the impact of this. I want to share with you, Mr. Chair, that it's no secret that even in my own home front, my husband, who had owned a local T-shirt printing company for almost, if not over 30 years, due to COVID-19, there has been no team sports, there have been no school sports, there has been no sports in general, and we have had no uniforms or no T-shirts or no items to print. We literally have shut down since the pandemic, and for me personally, Mr. Chair, it's been very heartbreaking for me, and you know, just thinking and what brought memories to me is I can remember the countless Liberation Day parades that I was able to spend with family and friends at my husband's shop, right on that parade route. And even if we didn't have one last year previously, that's where a lot of folks would stop by and buy some of our goods and just sit and enjoy, and that's not going to happen. He's totally shut down, and it's hard. But while one door has closed, it does not mean that we should give up and rely on the pandemic unemployment assistance program. I want to share with you, Mr. Chair, that we need to get creative. We need to adapt, we need to improvise, and we need to overcome. And together, I want to say we can overcome as legislators. We need to help our people, and we need to lift them up and help them get back on their feet. In no time, they will prosper again, and that is how I think that we can make government revenues stabilize once again. And it is through that, Mr. Chair, that this bill was initiated, and I thank the support of my colleagues who jumped on board with me. It is bipartisan support. I'm hoping to get more to jump on this bandwagon, and I want to say thank you for giving me the opportunity. I will note for the record to disclose that the fiscal report did come in, and it does show a negative impact to the government coffers, and I know that that fiscal report is appended to the journal for this hearing. But with that being said, Mr. Chair, it is important to realize that sometimes you have to think outside the box, be creative, give an opportunity for our families to jump back in. This is one way of at least helping that, and then once we get stabilized again, we can continue to do what we've done previously. So I hope that my colleagues would at least take the effort to look at this bill and give it its chance. So thank you for giving me the opportunity to speak, and thank you for my colleagues in the listening audience for being here as part of this public hearing on Bill number 1-35, 36. Sidros Masi.
Thank you, Madam Vice. We will now have our lone testimony from the Department of Revenue and Taxation. Ms. Shimzu, please. I'd like to also recognize that we're also joined by Senator Pedo Terlaje.
Happy Day, Senator San Agustin. For the record, my name is Daphne Shimizu, and I'm the Director of the Department of Revenue and Taxation. Again, Happy Day, Senator San Agustin, Chair of the Committee on General Government Operations, Appropriation, and Housing, and also Happy Day and good morning to Vice Speaker Tina Muña Barnes, Senator Pedo Terlaje, Minority Leader Senator James Moylan, Senator Brown, Senator Tydegui, Senator Ada, and Senator Duenas. Thank you for giving me the opportunity to provide testimony on Bill 1-36 this morning. Bill 1-36 proposes to temporarily waive the payment of broadly defined business license fees from the period of October 1, 2020 through September 30, 2022, and to retroactively allow for a credit for fees which have already been paid prior to enactment of this proposed law. For fiscal year 2020, approximately $2.5 million was collected for general business license fees, of which 10% was budgeted for the Department of Revenue and Taxation. If enacted without providing for an alternative source of funding for revenue tax, this bill has the potential of reducing our department's allotted budgetary resources directly by 10%, or about $250,000. As you know, when we came into fiscal year 2020, we had already had come in with a budget that was a little bit lower than the prior year by about $465,000. And so, again, I just want to thank you for the opportunity to speak on this bill, and I want to thank you for your continued support of our agency as well. Sidus Masi.
Thank you, Ms. Daphne. I'll go ahead and ask the author if you'd like to ask later. We'll start with Senator Pedo. Do you have any questions of Ms. Daphne, or any other question or statements you want to make on this bill? Not this time? Okay, Senator Jim Mullen, do you have any questions or statements you want to make on this bill?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Thank you, Daphne, for your testimony. I read a recent article regarding the business renewals that you testified, or that you gave opinion on, and we're noticing you brought to the attention that there are many new business licenses. Is that as in new businesses, or are they transferring, for example, from sole proprietorship to LLC, or sole proprietorship, changing their licensing type, or are these brand new companies opening up?
Thank you, Senator Moylan, for that question. We don't have stats on that, but we are seeing when you have a new business license application, that actually means you're a new business. So it's not clear though whether there are some businesses that are for, I do know of some people who may have closed a business and then started a business. And that's something that we have seen, but I don't have actual statistics on that. But yes, you're right. There are businesses that there are new businesses. There are people that have submitted applications. Back in September, we actually, for the first time, began to accept business license applications, through mail and through Dropbox. We were trying our best to allow for people who want to engage in business activity, or who want to go out and try to have a business so that they can make money. We wanted to be able to give them that opportunity, given the fact that, of course, we have a challenge with our ability to serve due to the public health emergency. So we did make those accommodations. But yes, I know that we had provided some information with regards to new business licenses. We did see new business license applications in this past fiscal year.
I believe the number you provided was 2,400. Is that correct?
Right. I think the amount that we had indicated for fiscal year 2020 was over 2,000. I'm sorry, I don't have that actual number with me.
And so those folks they paid their fee, right? They did make their payment for their new business license. This bill is specifically talking about renewals, right? Helping out during those that were in business during the pandemic to give some sort of relief. You also mentioned in the article there was over 1,000 or 1,700 that have not renewed their business license. In other words, closed down their businesses. Is that correct?
So there's so there are different terminology, and because there's the term cancellation, and there's the term, I guess, non-renewal, right? So when a business actually comes in, or an individual comes in to cancel a license, that's a cancellation. And then there are people who don't come in and they don't cancel, but they don't renew, and that's basically a non-renewal. So not all businesses or not all individuals who close their business or close up shop actually come in to cancel a license. And so I know that in the last year, when I had come to provide some testimony for the legislature, there was a question as to how many businesses have closed because of the COVID situation. It's really difficult to tell. I think that unless we go through like a full cycle where we see the number of businesses that don't actually renew, that's when we'll probably be able to see that impact. But we have seen some people who have come in to cancel their licenses, and some of them may have wanted to come cancel because they were starting a new business, or it could be as well, for those people I know who were trying to get some federal assistance and needed certain tax clearances. They may have come in and they may have had to do some cancellations, just so that way they can make sure that they were able to get certain tax clearances to obtain some federal funding.
So the projection on the loss of general funds for to waive what we're attempting to do with this bill on the renewal is based on a total number of, the number of total businesses. How many is that? So we're saying we're going to, on the fiscal note, approximately 2.5 million. Just wondering, how many licenses is that?
My understanding is, so there are general business licenses that are issued by the department. Then there are specialized licenses that are issued by boards, like, for example, PEALS issues for engineers, the CPA board issues for CPA licenses. So for the general business licenses we probably have over 20,000 business licenses that are active.
Okay, so you're saying 20,000 will be able to avail to this if this becomes public law?
Correct.
Okay. All right. Thank you, Daphne, Director. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you. Senator Joanne?
Thank you very much, Mr. Chairman. I just wanted to ask the Director, you mentioned that about $250,000 would be impacting to the Department of Revenue and Taxation. Where would you address that shortfall in your operations? I mean, we do understand some areas, particularly collections, you don't have enough resources or personnel to go out there and get existing taxes that are owed to the government. How would you absorb that shortfall of an additional $250,000?
And thank you, Senator Brown, for that question. Of course, our largest expense is for salaries and wages. Probably our salaries and wages out of a $12 million budget, our salaries is anywhere between $8 and $9 million. So that's really kind of the largest area. To be very honest, our team for many years has worked on a very bare bones budget. We have a very, very basic budget, which consists of payments for our contractors, payments for our rent, payments for our utilities, and then payments for salaries and wages. Likely what will happen is that, and usually on a regular basis, in order for us to be able to process returns, process refunds, we've actually have to go back and request for overtime so that our team can, be able to accommodate that. So really the area that that's probably going to be hit is going to be in the areas where there's manpower involved, right? So we may not be able to do some of the overtime. We may not be able to hire as we need because we have had some, we have actually had some, in 2020, we actually had three individuals who passed away in our agency. And I believe only one of those three we've been able to actually hire for. So likely, again, the largest area, the area that's most easily identified is going to be the area where it comes to our labor force.
So I guess the alternative maybe is to look at either the legislature appropriates the $250,000 difference to keep you functioning at your capacity, doesn't add on, but that's something that may need to be looked at if we're going to prioritize the services that your department provides. I mean, I know a lot of people have focus, of course, with tax refunds and understandably during these challenging times. I mean, people have an expectation to want to receive that. So I just think it's important as we look towards addressing these issues. What's the plus and minuses? What do we give? What do we gain? What do we lose? And then if this is something that's looked at as a priority, do we address making up that shortfall through other government funded sources? But thank you very much for responding to my question. Thank you very much, Mr. Chairman.
Senator Brown.
Thank you, Senator Brown. Senator Tello, do you have any questions, ma'am, or statements?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Yes, I do. Just a couple, and then maybe some comments too. Daphne, I know we've talked on the phone and had our Zoom meeting in particular to some of these questions that are asked, and I greatly appreciate your response to them. And, reading I do have one question with regards to business renewals of their license. Does any of these are businesses allowed to renew their license if they have outstanding taxes or obligations to the government of Guam?
Okay, so with regards to renewals of business licenses, if you don't have clearance, meaning that you have a tax liability that's outstanding, and we've already recorded in our system, then you cannot renew your business license without getting some kind of clearance. But that does not necessarily mean that people who have outstanding tax balances cannot get or cannot renew their license, because we have in the past and of course right now, especially during this current public health emergency, are doing our best to work with our licensees. I get calls from people who want to renew their business license but are in need of some consideration in terms of their ability to pay their taxes. So again, we do renew, and it is possible for people to renew their business license but still have an outstanding tax liability, as long as they have made some type of arrangement with our agency.
Okay, thank you. Also, it was mentioned from the fiscal note, the impact that it's going to have, and then I thank Senator Brown for asking a very good question on what are you going to do if this bill should pass. I mean, the impact is saying $5 million, $2.5 million in FY 2021 and $2.5 in FY 2022. And just this morning in Saipan, they had to furlough 180 employees from Saipan because of the revenue that was lost to them on the tourism. And that's 180 individuals that are going to be without a job. And that amount of money was actually, I think it was $5,688,000 was impacted. If, in other words, in order to keep that 180 individuals working in the government of Guam, it's going to cost Saipan $5.6 million, and this is close to that amount. So it's going to have a great impact, like you mentioned at your area, and whereas we're watching the CRER report, I don't know where we're going to get some of this funding if we don't start furloughing. So thank you.
Senator Tadegui.
Thank you, Senator Tello. Senator Tony, co-sponsor of the bill, sir.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Good morning, Ms. Shimazod. So I just wanted to find if perhaps maybe if we have like a threshold or applying for a waiver versus a blanket exemption from paying the fee for business licenses, do you think that perhaps could accomplish both, helping those that need the help, the businesses, the small businesses, and lessen the impact to the government by the revenue collections?
Well, I think that if there's going to be some type of a waiver application process, so anytime there's an application process, then there's of course going to have to be some labor put in terms of from our agency to make sure that we properly apply whatever waiver that would be. I do think that at this point, I'm not sure, perhaps I think it's maybe if the legislative body has some ideas about what types of criteria would qualify for such type of thing, maybe that may be helpful. I'm sorry, I mean, at this point, I know, to be honest, we are really seeing a lot of people come, to our agency to request for consideration because of the public health emergency. But even from the start, I mean, even in 2019, when we did start And when I started in this position, our position has been, we're not just, as Title 11 says, we're going to be collecting and enforcing. Our job is also to help people to come into compliance. So, our job is to help, as Senator Titlegy, had brought up the issue of people who have business licenses that need to be renewed but cannot pay the full taxes. That's our job. Again, on a waiver, perhaps that may be able to work, but it may take a little bit more labor. And also maybe, like for example, when we did Azudium and Gafa and we had an application process, it also involved some level of IT programming. So there was administrative costs that were associated with that.
I see, and because it's just, we have bars like, the bars and the businesses that have been closed for practically the entire year. So maybe some type of threshold or some type, I'd like to see what we can do to help those that were tremendously impacted by the closures, right? By the business shutdowns and things like that. But I think also that impacting the general fund revenue, the collections of the fees, we got to look at both and see how we can equalize it or at least not impact each other so much, right? I thank you for coming down this morning, and hopefully we'll be able to work out some type of process, if not the entire, just all those that apply for business license or renewals throughout the year and the next year, maybe some type of waiver or we'll work something, but sure. I hope to get this bill forward so that we can help those that are truly impacted to continue building their businesses, because I think the impact for a business license to the government will probably be what, $100, right, for a general?
It depends. I've seen some, it ranges, maybe it could be from $10 up to like $1,000 or so. Yeah. So it ranges.
Yeah, so, but the revenues that could be potentially generated from that one business license, right?
Correct. That
we waived for $10 and they paid in GRT $1,500. Those are the pros and cons to each one, and that's what we got to weigh and look like, weigh and look at and see how we can come up with something that is both advantageous to the business owners and advantageous also to the government coffers, so that we don't continue to see a dwindle in our general fund revenues, and try to sustain what we currently have, but continue to help build businesses as well. Thank you, ma'am.
Senator Ada.
Thank you, Senator Ada. Senator Chris, do you have any questions, sir?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. No, most of the questions I had were asked and answered. But I wanted to thank Director Shimizu for being here this morning and providing valuable input and testimony. I'm sure your schedule is very hectic and busy, so we appreciate that you're here today to provide testimony and answer our questions. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you. Senator Pedo, do you have any questions or any statements you want to make?
No, the questions that I wanted to put out has been asked already, so thank you very much, Mr. Chair.
Thank you. All right, I have a few, just wanted to remind my colleagues that as we consider this bill, I have nothing against waiving business license, okay? And maybe we need to take a look at maybe the penalty for failure to renew your license as you're required to do it. And just, and the reason why I can speak like this, my colleagues, that I'm a former revenue and tax employee. So I'm very aware of exactly. Oh, we have the speaker here. Speaker, do you have any questions you want to bring up before I continue on? Because after me, it's going to be the closing.
I was enjoying your remarks, but yes, if I could ask a couple questions, thank you.
All right.
First of all, and I apologize if I missed this being asked earlier, but does this, would this bill affect renewals? For example, would they not have to pay their their late fees? They're late, if they were late on renewals?
So, excuse me, Senator. So the language states all business license fees, including but not limited to fees for business license renewals collected. It doesn't specifically state any late fees, but it says all business license fees, so I would assume we could interpret it that it could impact also the late fees, ma'am.
Yeah. I guess that's my first issue, is the language too broad? Is it going to include every fee that you have versus just, the license renewal fee? And I don't want to include late fees, for example, that might disincentivize businesses from getting those licenses renewed. I'm concerned because the amounts are relatively small compared to, other costs for these businesses. These license fees range, they're almost all less than 100, except for the businesses where you have them scaled as to income. And I wanted to confirm, is this based on income? So we've got wholesale licenses, annual and retail, and then you've got scales from 1 to 250,000, 250 to 500. Is that based on gross receipts, or how is that? How do you determine which category they fit in?
Madam Speaker, based on my reading on the bill, it's all business license. So there's no selection of which one is which. Unless the author would like to clarify it, it's all business license.
Right.
It doesn't matter.
Right, so I'm saying that includes then, according to the list that I printed out, business license branch fees. This list has, for example, retail licenses. It begins, and they have a scale here, from 1 to 250,000, you pay $100. From 250 to 500,000, you pay $200, and it goes up like that. And I'm asking, are those numbers based on income?
Actually, Speaker Terlaje, sorry, good morning for the
Good
first.
morning.
With regards to the fees, I'm sorry, I'm not so familiar with how that is actually done. I do have a schedule of fees that I'm also looking at. I'm sorry. So with regards to that, I would assume it is going to be from gross receipts or from their income, from their gross income, yes, if that's the way that the fee schedule is written.
All right. And if it's based on income, then yeah, I would think that it's kind of proving that their income is coming in and that they're fitting into those categories. And even the highest one is when it exceeds 2 million, then the annual fee is $1,000. If you're between 1 and 2 million, your annual fee is $800. And if you're between 500,000 and $1 million, your annual license fee is $400. I guess what I'm trying to say is these seem relatively small amounts to me when you compare the rest of the costs for these businesses and these types of income categories. But on the flip side, the amount that is being put into rev and tax is very critical. It's, and it's being put there for a very specific purpose, and that is regulation, right? You are regulating their licenses, whether they are complying with what they're supposed to be doing under these licenses, and especially nowadays, I just feel like the regulation part of it may be, exacerbated because of COVID and the other precautions that you have to take, but that we have kind of put on you, rev and tax, to also enforce, right? We want enforcement, and we are demanding collect taxes, before we allow any more, waivers of it, collect what's due, because that might be able to take care of our shortfalls, right? But, so I guess I'm just very worried that these fees were very specifically detailed for your use, and I'm not sure the impacts except, the gross amount. And I don't want to disincentivize late registrations, of course. And thirdly is just overall, right? If you look at the budget overall that we're looking at, 29 million reduction in revenues. These revenues are being, from quick look at it, they're going to be reducing public health, GMH, DOE, DOC, University of Guam, GCC, and rev and tax is actually slated to get a $500,000 increase according to this budget compared to last year. And I know that you've told us still not enough, right? And if we want to really enhance our collections, not enough. We find it, over and over that the regulation part of our system is just, we we can't maximize that. And so I don't know. Do you think this is the best way to enhance revenues for the government of Guam? I mean, that this business license fee is actually having that big of an impact on these businesses that, you know, we need to waive that. As opposed to, yeah, I know we're considering waiving taxes and all other kinds of things based on what they do receive. But yeah, I don't know, what do you think?
Thank you, Madam Speaker, for your question. And to answer your question, maybe I have a few comments. One, with what we did in this past year as we were dealing with or addressing the issue of COVID and as we were trying to work to serve our people, we did try to give consideration for our different services where people couldn't come in. We tried to do some waiver of late fees and penalties. And when we did that, we tried to look at it in terms of our ability to provide service. So the area where we probably gave the most relief was driver's license, because that was the one area we really couldn't serve. We actually have people who have appointments going into 2022 already. And so we gave a kind of a blanket, if you call it, waiver for those people who had not been able to renew their licenses from, I think, end of 2019 coming into the end of this year. For business licenses, and I can provide we have it's documented in our volumes. We have what's called our DRT COVID Services Series. We issued our first volume in March 18, 2020, and we're up to volume 10. So each time that we've adjusted the way we do business, each time that we've adjusted something where we would wanted to make sure people knew that we were going to, for example, waive fees or move a deadline for an annual report and not charge the late fees, we've advised in our volumes, and that's all on our website. So in this past year, we have done our best to take into consideration the fact that it was difficult for our business owners to come in and to renew. And so during the times that we were closed, we did do our best to make sure we identified periods where we did not charge the late fee. That's one. And in addition to that, again, I think that, I do want to say, I know for the authors of this bill, I know, and for the legislature, for our entire government, we're doing our best to try to figure out how we can recover our economy the best that we can and in the most quick way possible. I know, and Senator Moylan did bring up the fact that there is about 20,000 active business licenses. So this has the potential of reaching about 20,000 business licenses. But you do bring up the point, Madam Speaker, that some of the license fees, they can range from $10, they can go up to $1,000, again, just depending on the type of activity that you have. So, I know that you all have a very hard job to try to figure out whether this is the right path. I'm going to do my best to provide the best information that I can to you, about our agency and what our thoughts are. Of course, our largest concern, and especially for myself, is trying to run the agency and try to make sure that we're able to provide the services, the really needed services that our people need. I'll tell you, it's been a very challenging year, I know, for everybody. Our agency, when we closed down March 16, 2020, last year, our team was activated March 18, 2020. We actually had people who were working through the public health emergency, and it was very challenging and difficult. But I do want to say, though, that we have a lot of really wonderful people who really want to serve and want to do our best to carry out our mandates and to help our people. I was at the gas station today, and it's been a hard time, but I was at the gas station today, and it really moved me when somebody turned around and asked me if I was the director of Rev and Tax, because they wanted to thank me for their stimulus payment. And it's for those people that we do our best, and I know that all of you here are just, and all, to the authors, I know Vice Speaker, Senator Pedo, Senator Ada, to the authors, I know that you're all, and all of you are trying to do your best to make the best decisions. But I'm here today to provide the impact on my agency, how it's going to impact the way that we're going to be able to serve. And really definitely and I'm not sure, Madam Speaker, if you were here earlier, the impact directly to our agency, we expect it to be about $250,000 annually, because we do receive 10% of total fees. And so that's the direct impact that we expect on our agency's budget. And so, again, it's my job as the Director of Rev and Tax to make sure that I do my best to to provide you with the information so you can make good decisions about our agency and how this will impact us. But, again, I do have to say, thank you to, of course, the legislature for coming up with this, because I know our businesses are hurting. But again, this is the information that I have based on what we have at our agency.
Thank you for that, and sorry. Thank you for pointing out I didn't remember, but you're right, that you have already extended the renewal of many licenses, and it's had an impact already on your agency during this fiscal year because of the extension of the payment deadlines or waiving of the payments. Yes, all right. Well, thank you very much, Director. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. Moving along, I wanted to first, number one, remind my colleagues that just last year we passed the amendment to the Dave Santos Act. So as everyone looks at trying to help the businesses, the numbers we don't have right now, Ms. Daphne, from you or from your department, is how many people are small business? And as we say, when we waive the business license for everyone, we're waiving to a group of folks that are not paying anything in taxes to start with. There's no GRT, okay? So don't be looking at, oh, we're gonna get a windfall. We're not gonna get no windfall. There's nothing to collect. 250 and below pays zero. 500,000 and below, or 250 to 500 pays 3% GRT. And I thank you, Madam Speaker, for bringing up that issue. Different income bracket pays a different business license. I would like to see some report, maybe from your office, to tell us what is the biggest group that are out there.
And thank you so much for bringing that up, Senator San Agustin. We actually were able to do kind of like a table where we were able to determine kind of a percentage of the GRT filers that come in at a certain range. As we were discussing or of course looking at LEXP, which is the limited exemption for certain small businesses, which is the enhanced Dave Santos, which was further enhanced back in June 2020, right? And so you're correct, right? There was the first Dave Santos Act, which was enacted many years ago, which allows for $0 to $40,000 of income to be exempted from gross receipts tax if you make $50,000 or less. And then in 2019, the first bill, one of the first bills I think to get passed was the limited exemption for certain small businesses, which allowed for, it changed it to $100,000 and $250,000, meaning that if you had up to $250,000 of income, then you pay 3%. For the first $100,000, you pay 3%. And then there was, because of the issue of COVID in June 2020, there was the enhanced LEXP, which was the enhanced limited exemption for certain small businesses, which means that for the first $250,000 of gross receipts for those businesses that make $500,000 or less, that they pay 3% and not the 5%. With regards to an actual figures, when we looked at historical data, fiscal year 2017, 2018 data, which is not the most current, but it's the best information that we had. We estimate that probably there are about 15 to 16,000 GRT filers. Okay, those are actual GRT tax return filers. And of those, about 85% of those filers fall below the $250,000 range. And I believe that another 5% represented the next level, which was the 500,000. So likely, based on historical data, again, which is not the best data, but it was the best data that we have right now, we estimate that probably 90% of our businesses fall below the $500,000 threshold. Is that helpful, sir?
Yes, that would help. And the only reason I'm asking that is because, like I said earlier, I'm not against the waiver of the business license, but there's got to be the category of the folks that should get the waiver. Like you mentioned earlier, and for my colleagues to just be reminded if you're not aware of this, but if you have a business license that you pay $10 for a rental of a home, $10 a year. You rent the house for, let's say, $1,200 or even $3,500. At the end of the year, you pay 0 in GRT. That's the simple math. And as we move up the category, there are going to be businesses out there that don't pay anything and they make good money. And I'm not going to fault them for making good money, and that's great. That's great for them. It's good for the economy because then they'll hire more people. And they don't need a business license waiver. There's certain categories, my colleagues, and the reason why I bring this up because when I hear that $2.5 million short reduction, and then I look at the other bills that are faced by my committee that is asking for a possible increase of the Dave Santos Act from $250,000 to $500,000, 0 GRT, and then the other bills that have been introduced, my colleagues, please be reminded, at the end of the day, and in the months to come, we're going to be looking at the Budget Act. And when we look at the Budget Act, be mindful. It's not going to be figure out administration where you're going to reduce. We need to, when we introduce policies, and I'm not doing an education to anybody, but we need to be mindful of that. When we say reduce, look at revenue and tax and say, we want you to collect. We want you to pay tax refunds. We want you to do this. Being a former employee of revenue and tax, overtime is critical. Critical to the agency to do what they need to do. Madam Vice, do you have any closing or any questions you want to ask? And then we will close. Thank you.
Si Jules Masi, Mr. Chair, I want to thank you for your comments stated and even for the answers from the good Director of Revenue and Tax. I do want to note for the record that in 2018, the DRT had collected in revenues from businesses at, I think, over $37,317,000. And then in 2019, I think there was a reported $37,525,000. And then, of course, COVID hits in 2020. And where do we go from there? Because that's really the kicker where everything won't be consistent. So when we looked at the impact based on what the fiscal note says, and just trying to see how we can get our businesses back into, is how do we help them get back in? And I truly appreciate saying that, yes, the effect to us is going to be about $250,000. How do we cover that shortfall? And my simple question will come up in a second, but I wanted to also know that if you don't have a business and there's no money out there, you pay 0 taxes, right? How do we get these businesses, the 20,000 businesses, small businesses that are out there that would have filed for a business license, would have made money in their businesses and then pay the 5% or the 3% or the 5% today? It's how do you get them back in? So sometimes as policymakers, we need to think, we need to give a little in order for the government to receive, because it is our responsibility to pay for the basic education, safety, and welfare of our people. And I truly appreciate the fact that, yes, there is going to be an effect. Yes, but what is the alternative that we can look at, and what can the policymakers help the agency look at based on the shortfall we're going to have? And I realize that. I didn't come here and say, I just want to give it to them. I wanted to share the impact. I wanted to know what BBMR is telling us. I wanted to know what Rev and Tax is up against. Because it is important to bring the business community back. And if we can give them a little for the next year or two, the effects in the future will be better by 2022, 2023, and so on. But we got to at least give them an opportunity to come back and redo their licenses. So my question to you, Madam Director, if I may, is as of today, has DRT, Department of Revenue and Tax, received any support for recovery resources from the federal government for 2020, from the CARES Act, or any of the money that will be coming in from the stimulus package, anything that can help the government of Guam sustain the operations based on the losses just from the pandemic alone? Has DRT received anything to help out?
Madam Vice Speaker, with regards to like the programs we've been running, the economic impact payment programs, we have not received direct aid in terms of administration cost. And that's something that for EIP 3, actually for EIP 2, we had been communicating with the IRS and the Treasury about. Unfortunately for EIP 2, that was not something that was able to happen because the timing was very, I guess it went very fast. But we've been fighting for it for EIP 3 because, we know that there's cost for postage, there's cost for checks, there's cost for envelopes, there's cost for the labor to put those to stuff and print, there's cost for our printer cartridge, right? And so we have not received monies in terms of administrative costs for those programs directly. However, the governor and lieutenant governor in the budget for the coronavirus relief fund, they did actually allocate some monies to the department for modernization, and we actually utilized that money. In addition to the fiscal year 2020 budget, where we were able to get, I think, $168,000 so we can get 80 computers, we actually used some of the monies that we got from the coronavirus relief fund. We were able to get another 80 computers. So our team actually was able to get 160 computers. We were able to get 7 laptops, 21 tablets, I believe 10 or 20 scanners. We were also able to, because it's very difficult for us to be able to require people to social distance and then require them to come to a meeting. So we made sure that for the workstations that we had, they had webcams, so we can actually, there's some groups that needed to have Zoom meetings. We got a time clock that used facial recognition instead of us having to put our hand on it, and also can use access like a badge a magnetic strip badge, so that we can clock in, so that we don't have people having to touch a time clock. We also utilized that money, some of it to help pay for the Ajude Mangafa program as well. So we've actually utilized that coronavirus relief money that the governor was able to allocate monies to us for, so that we can pay those. But in terms of actual direct funding, in terms of administration cost, unlike the Department of Labor, we did not, through the CARES Act or through the CRTRA, receive any administrative costs to run these programs.
Maybe my next question again is, even if you didn't receive anything, is there any possibility of looking at what's coming down in the recovery efforts for DRT to get anything? Is there anything working closely with the clearinghouse or just anywhere that we can ascertain, looking at EDA grant programs out there through the federal government as they continue their efforts to trying to bring businesses or governments back to where they were, or at least keep them afloat? Are you going to continue to look for programs like that?
Well, I mean, with regards to what we're working to do at our agency is to try to figure out how we can help support businesses and, of course, taxpayers and for the other services that we provide. And so that is going to be through kind of a major modernization effort. We've already, we actually will be launching an enhanced BPT system. And so that way all of the business license privilege tax forms, including any amendments, can be filed online. And that's actually something that we're launching beginning March 1. We also, will be launching very soon other enhancements so that people will not have to come in and do face-to-face services. So with regards to those efforts, that's where our focus is. We're working, of course, I mean, there are TAP grants through the Department of Interior that can be obtained, I suppose. Those are things that, I've had some discussion with certain people in the front office regarding, and so that we can maybe look to identify some funding for that. But that's in terms of, I think from a rev and tax standpoint, because we provide so many different types of services, probably the best ways that we can work is to just make sure that people can avail of our services without having to physically come in all the time to avail them. And so our focus has been our modernization efforts. And for those, ma'am, yes, if it's possible for us to get federal funding, those are things that we're looking at.
Madam Director, for that. I truly appreciate the efforts, but more importantly, the work that you do. And if there's anything out there that we can recover and assist in helping your efforts, then please don't hesitate to let us know. And it is good to hear that you guys will be at least not just looking through the modernization efforts, but if there's anything out there that can come our way, please don't hesitate to take the time to apply. So, Mr. Chair, if I may, I know that this bill has some fiscal impacts, but more importantly is how can we look at bringing our businesses back, 20,000 businesses that it could help relieve, and an opportunity for them to restart, reboot, re-synergize themselves back into the business community so that they can be able to give those jobs and literally get the flow of what they do best, and for them to start to prosper again. I think that this bill is just a little attempt to help in those efforts to revitalize them back to normal as we continue to try and recover. And hopefully by 2022, I'm praying that we will recover or get resources to help our business community out. So I'm grateful that you're here, Madam Director, and Mr. Chair, thank you for hearing this bill. And with that being said, I hope that my colleagues could at least give it its fair effort in our commitment to showing the business community of Guam that our policymakers are trying. Sana Masi.
Thank you, Madam Vice. Senator Pedo, you wanted something because she closed. Go ahead, real quick, please. Thank you.
First off, I just want to thank the Director of Revenue and Taxation for your input. But when I look at the bill itself, understandably, our main purpose right now with all the other senators is to make sure that we help out the businesses. Bill number 136, we have to be mindful that this is actually a critical bill. It's very sensitive. And I know that the comments that was made by the Bureau of Budget and Management Research actually is coming out with a 7.6 million shortfall on the BPT. And though we are here trying to move forward with helping the businesses, we need to be mindful that we also need the funding for some of the services that is being provided by the rest of the government of Guam agencies. So we have to to be mindful that we have to really look at this bill. I support this bill. I'm a co-sponsor for this bill, but we need to be mindful that there are two things that we have to consider. We're going to move forward with helping the businesses go back and capitalize, but we also need to be mindful that we need to also consider the finances of the government. You know, when the chairman, Mr. Chair, mentioned the 250,000 to the 500,000, and he did mention the 3%. You mentioned 3%, but when I look at the bill, actually we're waiving the licensing fee for these businesses. And if they don't pay the GRT, then there's nothing for our government. And they don't pay for their license. We're reducing the GRT from 250,000 to the 500. We have to, and the chairman mentioned 3%. 3% is almost nothing that we're going to give our government. So we need to really, this bill to me is we need to make the right decision in as far as going forward with this bill and get some kind of analysis from actually the Bureau of Budget. Because no matter how you look at it, We are giving the opportunity to the business to move forward, but then we're leaving the services of our government aside. So that's all that I have to say, Mr. Chair. Thank you very much, Director. Thank you for your input.
Thank you, Senator. The committee will continue to receive testimonies for the next few days. Please address your written testimony to the Committee on General Government Operation, Appropriation, and Housing, and submit it via email to Senator joesaugustin@gmail.com or to my office located at Rand Care Building, second floor, Suite 3, 761 Marine Corps Drive, Tamuning, Guam. And this will conclude the public hearing on Bill 1-36. And since those mercy for your attendance and participation in today's hearing, and for those at home, thank you for watching. The public hearing is now adjourned on Bill 1-36 LS. It is now 10:02. Thank you, ladies and gentlemen. We will take a short recess and then we'll continue on for 5 minutes and then start up with Bill 40. Thank you. Good morning, ladies and gentlemen. The Committee on General Government Operation, Appropriation, and Housing is now called to order. Today is Wednesday, February 10, 2021, and the time now is 10:11. Notice for this public hearing were disseminated via email to all senators and all main media broadcasting outlets. First public notice was issued on Tuesday, January 19, and February 2nd, and February 5th. Today is Wednesday, February 10, 2021, and the time now is 10:11. The committee will hear and accept testimony on Bill 40-36 COR, an act to add Section 1512.5 to Title 5 Guam Code annotated relative to authorizing the refunding of Government of Guam Business Privilege Tax Bonds. Series 2011A, Government of Guam Business Privilege Tax Bonds, Series 2012B, and Government of Guam Business Privilege Tax Refunding Bonds, Series 2015D, and related matters. I'd like to acknowledge my colleagues that have joined me on this hearing. We have Madam Speaker Therese Terlaje, we have Senator Jim Moylan, Senator Joanne Brown, Senator Terlaje, Senator Tony Ada, Senator Frank Blas, and Senator Pedo Terlaje. Those testifying on behalf of Bill 40-36 COR will be recognized by myself. Written testimony shall be submitted to the committee. Please provide my legislative staff with your written testimony for photocopying. Testimony may be read, and lengthy testimony should be summarized to about 5 minutes, but will allow additional time if needed. Individuals will be allowed to present oral testimony only once. Once you are done, you may be asked to remain in the room for question or for additional testimony as may be desired by members of the committee. Question and testimony shall be confined to the substance or nature of the agenda. Personal inference as to the character or the motive of any senator or any individual testifying is not permitted. Any violation of the general rule of conduct will result in removal from the public hearing by myself. Proper form and decorum shall be practiced by all present in the public hearing room for these proceedings. Individuals who fail to maintain proper form and decorum may be restricted from providing oral testimony and will be removed from the room. When you speak, please make sure the microphone is on and that you speak into the microphone. Please state your name and your title for the record. We will now begin to discuss Bill 40-36. My colleagues, this bill was referred to my committee from the Committee on Rules as it was transmitted from the Governor's office. So I will just begin with the panel that are present today. We have a GITA representative, we have BBMR director, and DOA director. The GITA representative is always a good one to see every day, every time we meet. We're dealing in money. But we'll begin with, I would assume that it's going to be either BBMR or DOA will speak first on the bill, and then GITA can comment about how they're going to do the refinancing and what the impact may be. Sir.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chairman. Hafaday, Senator San Agustin, and members of the Committee on General Governmental Operations, Appropriations, and Housing. My name is Lester L. Carlson, Jr., the Director of the Bureau of Budget and Management Research. Thank you for allowing me to testify today in full support of Bill 40-36. As a result of the current municipal bond market dynamics, Gov Guam has a very attractive opportunity to refund certain outstanding BPT bonds for significant debt service savings currently estimated to achieve over $39 million in gross savings. These savings, which we have structured to be taken up front, will allow Gov Guam to realize approximately $5 million in this current fiscal year, $19.9 million in fiscal 2022, and $13.1 million in fiscal 2023. The existing 2011A and 2012B BPT bonds have a call date of early 2022. However, they can be refinanced as early as May of this year. I have attached a summary of the refunding opportunity provided to Gov Guam by Citigroup. I'm sure many of the members of this body sitting here today have had the opportunity to meet with representatives from Citigroup. They've serviced Guam for over 20 years. The current market offers GovGuam an opportunity to lock in savings, as I mentioned earlier, as soon as May, in advance of the fiscal year 2022 budget discussions through a forward delivery refunding, where investors will commit to purchasing bonds 4 to 5 months in advance of the refunding. So what we would be doing here is asking the body's permission and authorization to proceed. We would price the bonds, get commitments in May, and then in early October, close and realize the savings. But by that time, we'll already have known what it was that our obligations were, and how they can be incorporated into the budget. GovGuam also has an opportunity to structure even more savings in the current fiscal year with a modest taxable refunding of certain 2015 Series D BPT bonds. As evidenced by the 2020 JFK refunding, which attracted the interest of more than 40 investors, even during the current pandemic, institutional investors still value Guam, and many have been willing to increase their holdings despite the current challenges faced throughout the world due to COVID-19. Should the execution of the BPT refunding opportunity take longer, GovGuam could lose the ability to realize any savings in the current fiscal year and be more at risk for rising interest rates to diminish savings anticipated in the following fiscal years. Financial markets are dynamic and change on a daily basis. Authorizing the BPT refunding expeditiously will provide GovGuam with the flexibility to start the approximately 60-day process to prepare a transaction and access the municipal bond market as soon as May of 2021, and enable GovGuam to lock in meaningful debt service savings while providing more certainty for the 2022 budget. In the municipal market, strong mutual fund outflows have increased demand, while low new interest tax exempt supply to start 2021 has resulted in lower tax exempt rates for borrowers. I'm sure everybody here is aware that mortgage rates are continuing to be at all-time lows, and this is also reflected in the municipal bond market. Also, following the inauguration of President Joe Biden, the tax-exempt market has seen a strong performance as tax-exempt investors appear to view the Biden-Harris agenda as positive news for the tax-exempt market. The high-yield segment, BBB ratings and below, has seen the biggest move in lower interest rates since January 1st, as credit spreads have compressed to all-time lows. That just simply means that the difference between a AAA rate and a BBB ordinarily is this, but is now more compressed. At the start of 2021, high-yield municipal bond funds have seen record weekly inflows, leaving investors with a large amount of new money to invest with very limited new issue high-yield supply. This has created a supply-demand imbalance and resulted in a significant tightening of credit spreads in the high-yield market. This financing just makes sense, and we encourage the swift passage of Bill 40-36. Again, I did attach the summary from City. Some of the points on the page marked summary were contained in my testimony, and the following page indicates the savings on the far right column for the committee's review. And with that, that concludes my testimony.
Thank you, Lester. I think we'll go ahead and go to the Gita, right? Mr. Byrne, do you have anything you wanted to bring up, Mr. Byrne? If not, I'll have Gita folks speak.
Yes, Mr. Chairman, if I could just make a brief statement.
All right, please.
Thank you, sir. Good morning, Mr. Chairman and Senators. My name is Edward Byrne, Director of the Department of Administration. DOA is also in full support of Bill 4036. It is only prudent and appropriate to capitalize on the opportunity to refinance these obligations to achieve maximum savings on debt service. Citigroup has set out the numbers behind the impetus to refinance these bonds, including the proposed forward delivery mechanism. These processes will enable GovGuam and its general fund to lock in currently favorable rates. The estimated savings which will be available from this proposal will be of great benefit to the general fund in this year, fiscal 2021, and for the next 2 years, years when it can be expected that the general fund revenues will be subject to variability and uncertainty because of the global pandemic. As Mr. Carlson said, the financing just makes sense. Please pass Bill 4036 so that we can begin the process. Thank you, sir.
All right, thank you, Mr. Byrne. Ed? Ms. Gida?
Hafa and good morning. My name is Tina Garcia, Gita Public Finance Manager, and I'm here to read the testimony of Ms. Melanie Mendiola, Gita CEO and Administrator, who apologizes she had a previous commitment at this time. Hafa Senator San Agustin, and members of the Committee on General Government Operations, Appropriations, and Housing. I would like to hear and submit this testimony supporting Bill 40-36. The Guam Economic Development Authority, in its role as the central financial manager and consultant for the government of Guam, monitors and advises the government when the market conditions are attractive for refunding for a bond or, in some cases, lease financings. The 2011 business privilege tax bonds and the 2012 business privilege tax bonds have a current call date of January 1, 2022, with the earliest date for the current refunding of October 3, 2021. With the improvement we have seen in the markets recently, we have found that there exists an opportunity to achieve over $39 million in debt service savings and accelerate this savings into fiscal year 2021, estimated at $5 million, fiscal year 2022 estimated at $19.9 million, with the refunding of the BPT 2011A and the 2012B and a portion of the 2015D BPT bonds. The primary advantage of this advance refunding is that GovGuam would be able to lock in savings ahead of the passage of the fiscal year 2022 budget with lower debt service. GovGuam would issue a forward delivery refunding pricing between May and June 2021 on the outstanding callable 2011A and 2012B BPT bonds, along with a modest taxable refunding of the November 15, 2022 maturity and a portion of the 11/15/2021 maturity of the 2015D BPT bonds to achieve the estimated 11.7% present value savings and lower the interest rates to about 3.57%. This assumes no extension of the current maturity, a 10-year par call, and a lowering of the debt service reserve fund balance to reflect the average debt service of the new bonds. Once again, thank you for the opportunity to provide this comment in support of the immediate passage of Bill 40-36. Should you have any questions, please contact Ms. Melanie Mendiola at GIDA. Sizo Isma Asi.
Thank you, Tina.
Thank you.
We'll call Millie. Now, Madam Vice, the Chairwoman of Committee on Rules, ma'am.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I guess my question will go to Lester, if he may help me out with this. We're looking at a $39 million savings, right, as you noted in your report? The 39?
That's correct, ma'am.
Yeah, my question to you is, if the savings is going to be achieved in that, and you have a breakdown of 5 million for 2021, 19.9 for 2022, and 13.1 for 2023, do you have a proposal of what that funding will be, that extra funding will be used for, and as far as the breakdown?
I do not have anything for 2022, but I do note that the executive budget request submitted to this body, there is a shortfall, and I believe there are a number of public health, public safety, and public education areas that could use some assistance. And I think the nice thing about what this opportunity provides is that we can provide that needed assistance. So as far as specific areas, it really does come out to what Senator San Augustine's Appropriations Committee's bill that he ends up reporting out looks like, and how that savings then could be better incorporated to meet the needs.
Thank you, Mr. Carson, for sharing that information with us, because every penny counts, and knowing that there are shortfalls, especially as it relates to health, looking at the availability, if this goes through, could truly help those agencies get the resources that they really need. So thank you. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you, Madam Chair of Committee on Rules. Madam Speaker, Senator Therese. Speaker Therese, any questions for the panel?
Yes, thank you, Mr. Chair. Ms. Garcia, Gita, thank you so much for your testimony. Thank you all for your testimony. Could you just tell us what are the costs of this refinancing?
Hello? Okay, sorry. I don't have the exact cost, but we're normally 2%, less than 2% of the par amount of the financing for the total cost for the refunding.
So what would that be if it's 2%?
I'll give you give me a moment and I'll calculate.
Tina, when you identified that the estimated the cost, that's 2% of the total what you refinance. So if you can give us that total number so we can picture it all.
The total estimated bond par amount is about $610.7 million. And sorry, wait, that's too high.
It's 285 plus 14. So the par would be
325.
about 300 million.
300 million, yeah.
So
sorry.
2% would be 6 million.
My apologies. The total par will be around 300 million, and 2% of that is about 6 million. And the estimated, Gita estimated the all-in cost interest percent to be 3.57%, and that's after all costs.
Okay, thank you. And is the bill as written, I mean, I heard your breakdown of the savings per year, but does the bill as written allow the savings, or I guess in the refinancing, is that set? Or is it possible that in the refinancing you're going to move the savings around in the years, in between the years? Or, sure, Lester?
Thank you, Madam Speaker. We were leaning heavily towards a upfront savings to coincide with the pandemic recovery. We can run level debt service savings, but we just don't believe that the benefit would be, the benefit just isn't there. But we can certainly provide that to the committee.
No, I agree with the upfront. I just wanted to know if the bill is written kind of mandates that upfront service. It's kind of open, right?
Yes.
Okay, savings. And then, and the bill as written doesn't allocate these savings anywhere at this point, is that
No, ma'am.
correct?
No.
Okay. So, all right. When do you think the 5 million savings in FY21 would be able to be realized, I guess?
So if we are able to close the bonds again between May and June, then that's where we would realize the savings. And again, it's
On closing?
Yeah,
Right.
at closing.
Okay. All right. Thank you very much. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. Senator Frank Blas. We'll start from my far right now, and we'll go the opposite direction. Senator Frank Blas.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, and thank you, Mr. Byrne, Mr. Carlson, and Mrs. Garcia. I know that what we provided was very safely and conservatively slow, or tried to the the assumptions with regard to the climate or what we hope to attain in this. What is the worst case scenario in this attempt, or what assurances can we get, or will we have, that these assumptions that you're making, that we can somehow attain or achieve these marks? Is there any?
Thank you, Senator Blas. There are no concrete assurances we can provide at this time, given the dynamics of the market. The bill, as written, does, with all bond issuances, require that we have a minimum 2% net present value savings as a minimum threshold. The good thing about what we're asking you guys to consider today is that we will have a very, very good idea in May, June at the very latest, of what it is that investors have promised to buy. Therefore, we can relay those numbers to you in the May-June timeframe, certainly well in advance of the completion of the FY22 budget.
Okay, and according to your assumptions, and what we probably can attain is you're looking and you're hoping initially for initial savings of 4.9 mil?
That's correct.
And you had mentioned earlier that what you're trying to do is recognizing that there is a shortfall in the budget already of what you anticipate of how much?
You talking about this current year?
No, that's taking into consideration that this doesn't exist. What is it that you anticipated the budget shortfall to be for next fiscal year?
For the next fiscal year?
Yeah.
I think it was about 20-something million dollars.
And do you have a projected shortfall for the budget for this fiscal year?
No, we're too early. In the CRER, I think pegs it at around $11 million, but that's with a significant amount of retail not open. So, as I've mentioned on numerous occasions, I'm hopeful that the vaccinations and some of the other proactive measures that we're taking locally will allow for the opening of more retail, therefore more business activity, therefore better collections.
Okay, recognizing and seeing that these are probably the projections and everything based on what you had just stated, you know, the reductions in as far as retail activity and collections and whatnot, will that have any effect on your presentation of our solvency or our ability to be able to go to market with this?
No, sir. Right now, we pledge 3% of the 5% BPT. That is extremely strong coverage. We have abundance of coverage. This bond deal was actually structured to provide investor security. And so even if we ended the fiscal year, or we were tracking when the time we priced these bonds to have a deficit at the end of the fiscal year, it would not adversely impact this credit simply because of all the inherent safeguards contained in the bond indenture.
So what we're looking at, so there is going to be no structural change to the initial bond that we had on this thing. It's just a matter of the refinancing. I mean, so you talked about the security of the 3%, right? So if I remember, that was the security that we provided when we first went out with this. So nothing of that is going to change.
No, sir. As a matter of fact, everything that we've entered into from a bond perspective requires debt service to be paid first. So the construct of the budget, you know, we take out the debt service, then we take out tax refunds and any credits, GMHA pharmaceutical fund, and then what's left is available for appropriation. So you're absolutely correct, sir. Those obligations are structured to be paid first and then government operations afterwards.
Okay. Thank you very much. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you, Senator Blas. Senator Etta?
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Chair. Lester, you were mentioning that the execution of the BPT, should it take longer, and Guam would lose the ability to realize any savings in the current fiscal year. And the bond market is opening, what, May 2021?
We would be looking at pricing in May, yes.
Yeah.
Approaching the market.
So what would be the latest that this bill can pass to ensure that we don't jeopardize the savings or the interest rates?
I'm hoping that the body can take this bill up in the next legislative session. We're already the second week of February. Upon passage, we then have to be able to begin the lengthy process of rating agency engagements, the supplemental indenture preparation, all the sausage making that goes into a bond deal. And once we have the authorization, then we can make a public notice through GITA so that people are aware that this body has authorized the refunding, and the underwriting firms can start beginning, to make some contact. Hey, we're working on this deal. We're working on this deal.
Mm-hmm.
It's kind of like the marinade before the barbecue.
Right. So I believe we go into session, I believe this Friday, the 12th.
Oh, no, well, not that soon, sir.
Okay. So then we're looking at then the next session, the March session at the latest.
Please, because it doesn't give us a whole heck of a lot of time after, and I'm hoping that the session could be early March, because you pass it in March, that only gives us, April and May, and we want to be in the market in May. So the 60-day window that we normally need, we'd really like to be able to have that opportunity to do justice to this bill.
So we have this session in late March, mid to late March, and are we actually looking at cutting it really close, or
It
would still be
sir.
something that you can work with?
I would really like it if you could do it, next week or Friday is asking too much, I realize that, but early March would really be of great assistance.
Yep, but I think if we're looking at taking advantage of the savings that we could realize from the refinancing and working together to either place it onto this session agenda, or perhaps holding a special session for that, I think that's something that we can look at. So I'm not sure when we're scheduled for our session in March. Madam Speaker will probably be able to help with that, and look forward to including this into the session agenda.
Thank you, Senator Ada.
Thank you, Mr. Carlson. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you. Senator Titlery.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, for the opportunity, and thank you for being here today to testify. In fact, I was hoping BBMR would be here in Bill 1 that we had earlier to testify whether...
I was outside.
Oh, does BBMR support Bill 1?
Let's stick with Bill 40.
Well, since he's here a minute,
We'll
Mr.
stick to
Chair.
Bill 40. Thank you, Senator Tyree. And then you can answer that later, Lester.
Okay, thank you. So regarding the BBT and per the CRER report ending December 31st, 2020, Guam collected $21,733,202 less during the first quarter in FY 2021. That's compared to the same period in FY 2022, that's a difference of about $84,139,049. If the government of Guam was successful in refinancing BPT bonds at lower interest rate, will the government be able to meet these obligations considering that our tourism industry remains closed?
I believe I answered that question when Senator Blas posed it, ma'am.
So you still stand firm to that, considering the numbers that I just reiterated about how much less that we are, you still feel that same
Yes.
way? So you mentioned to my other colleague about trying to get this bill passed. What about future legislation? We know that that was passed regarding the BBT. If there is any future legislation that would lower the BPT or even, add less, like what we did for the 250,000 on, well, let me ask you first. 3% is always obligated to bonds, right? 3%.
Yep.
Anything after that, not. So if you refinance this, it'll be just the 3%. Is that correct?
That's the pledge.
Okay. So as long as we don't touch that, so we would not be able to do any kind of legislation because it would jeopardize bond covenants, correct?
That is correct.
So that being said, with, moving forward, these individuals who buy these bonds, do they look at our, economic or financial situation on Guam when they decide to whether to buy it or not, or to refinance? Is this something that they look into first?
Very intently, ma'am.
Right. So if Guam is falling short, especially with the CRER reports and, like I mentioned, the numbers going down and you still feel confident that these bonds will sell, what is the word you used on KUAM? You're optimistic?
Always optimistic. I'm
That's the
always
word?
optimistic, yep.
Optimistic? Well, most people want to be more realistic, moving forward, but I guess being not optimistic. So Tina, you mentioned earlier that it's a total of $300 million that's going to be refinanced, correct?
Yes.
And GITA takes, whenever you finance, when GITA is a part of this financial, so when GITA is part of this negotiations, you take a 2%?
No.
Okay.
The 2% is the total cost of the financing, which includes the attorneys, the underwriters, and all other costs involved.
How much does GITA make from this?
So GITA's fee is actually 0.2%, at, around that range. And so maybe around 600,000. But again, the GITA fee is a one-time fee. We continue monitoring it for the remainder of the maturity. So that's kind of the basis for that. It's a one-time fee.
So is it technically that how this works is it's $300 million that you're refinancing, but you have to add that $6 million on the cost, so you're actually, is it going to be borrowing $306 million, or is it just 300 and then you have to incorporate that $6 million into the payments? Is that how it?
The numbers we've given you as far as we would have to get the estimated par, but yeah, it would be 300 million. Our sources would be 300 million plus the any release from the debt service reserve. Our uses would include escrow payment, funding for escrow, and then any and all costs. So it comes, it comes up to maybe just a little bit over 300 million. But usually because our bonds are priced at a premium, although we're selling about 300 million in bonds, we actually release or actually borrow a little bit less than that because again, in what we've seen in all our financings, there's a large demand from investors. So that helps us bring down the par.
Okay. Well, thank you, Tina, for that. It's always a pleasure seeing you here to testify. And thank you, Mr. Chair, and I hope I can get that answer from BBMR about Bill 1. Thank you.
Thank you. You're welcome. Senator Brown.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chairman. I mean, a lot of my question was asked by Senator Tello with regards to, what the ultimate costs. And I certainly appreciate Ms. Garcia being able to provide those figures so we know exactly what the financing is going to cost us and how that's going to come into place with the overall amount that we're refinancing. I mean, I think we can see the initial plus of about $38 million just within the next 3 years moving forward. And I think we all recognize our economic challenges. And this certainly, I can't believe I'm saying this because I'm actually saying something favorable to the administration. And I don't know what I'm drinking right now, but I think we can see the benefit of where that's going to be simply because we're already in a financial decline with regards to our tourism industry and other businesses here that support that industry that have been unfortunately either reduced in operation or not operating at all as a result of this pandemic. And so certainly at least how we can look at taking advantage of these savings, particularly because it is within the first 3 years. And this is probably where our need's going to be the greatest, anticipating hopefully that later this year, if, keep our fingers crossed and on prayer that, we'll be able to overcome this pandemic and we don't have something more challenging that's going to affect us. And I appreciate the fact also that the funds have not been dedicated yet, so that would all open up the opportunity to us looking at what the more critical priorities are in our government that we are going to need to address the respective shortfalls. So. I appreciate the presentation. I think having dealt with all of you collective parties on our own financing for the port, and certainly the extent to which the investors do analyze the Guam market, and you're right, in spite of our challenges, they want to buy more than we have to sell, and that's a very good position to be in. I hope we continue to be in that position moving forward. So thank you very much for the presentation and providing the information to us. Thank you very much, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you, Senator Brown. Senator Moylan. Sir.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Thank you to the panel. Lester, I got really excited when I saw BBT but we're refinancing the bond, but I'm hoping, that's still a good sign. Anything that reads BBT for me and we're discussing about it, that's really helpful. Of course, we should be looking at this as DOA director has stated. It makes sense, and I'm glad, like Senator Brown has mentioned, that these finances and our savings have not been dedicated. So I know we have our budget hearing coming up, and I think that's where we'll really look at where we can prioritize some stuff. But Mr. Chair, if I can, I just put in a little line. I think we found where we can find an additional $250,000 that DRT could use, and probably something for the De Santis bill as well. So I thank you for the presentation, and I'm looking forward to this moving forward. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you, Senator Moylan. Senator Pedo, do you have any questions to the panel?
Not a question, but just a congratulatory for Lester and Tina for your testimony. I just wanted to point out that, Public Law 3599 was adopted the level of, for fiscal year 2021 at 300 million, and I'm glad to see that the BPT is tracking 290 million, so we're just about 12 million short from that estimation. And I want to say certainly that we will probably meet that $12 million by the time this pandemic is over. And I want to thank Lester and Tina for your input. Thank you very much, Mr. Chair.
Thank you, Senator Terlaje. And thank you to the panel and to my colleagues that participate today on the hearing. I'd like to only stress to my colleagues, because there's a savings doesn't mean we need to appropriate it. We need to make sure we keep the government functional, the people of Guam taken care of, so that if anything was to ever happen, we're not caught with trying to figure out how to fund it. And we try to balance it. And exactly what Senator Brown did. I was surprised she even said that, but thank you, Senator Brown. But it's all about the staff. When the staff does their job, they do their homework, it gives us the right feeling that we need. And it's, we just move on from there. The committee will continue to hear testimonies for the next few days, and we'll try to address the speed of presenting this. Please address your written testimony to the Committee on General Government Operation, Appropriation, and Housing, and submit it via email to Senator Joe S. Agustin at gmail.com, or to my office located at Rand Care Building, 2nd floor, Suite 3, 761 South Marine Corps Drive, Tamuning, Guam. Jesus Masi for your attendance and participating in today's hearing. And for those at home, thank you for watching this public hearing on Bill 40-36 hours now adjourned. It is now 10:55. And you all have a nice day. Thank you.